welcome to my YouTube channel. Today we are going to continue with our book club. We're going to go over the Wisdom of Solomon starting at chapter 11. Chapter 11, verse 1. She prospered their works in the hand of the holy prophet. And they went through the wilderness that was not inhabited, and pitched tents in places where they lay no way. Verse 3. They stood against their enemies and were avenged of their adversaries. Verse 4. When they were thirsty, they called upon thee, and water was given them out of the flinty rock, and their thirst was quenched out of the hard stone. For by what things their enemies were punished, by the same they in their need were benefited. For instead of a fountain of perpetual running river troubled with foul blood, for a manifest reproof of that commandment whereby the infants were slain, thou gavest unto them abundance of water by means which they hoped not for. Verse 8. Declaring by that thirst, then how thou hast punished their adversaries. For when they were tried, albeit, but in mercy chastised, they knew how the ungodly were judged in wrath and tormented, thirsting in another manner than just. For these thou didst admonish and try as a father, but the other as a severe king thou didst condemn and punish. Verse 11. Whether they were absent or present, they were vexed alike. For a double grief came upon them, and a groaning for the remembrance of things past. Verse 13. For when they heard their own punishments, the other to be benefited, they had some feeling of the Lord. For whom they received with scorn, when he was long before thrown out at the casting forth of the infants, in the end, when they saw what came to pass, they admired. Verse 15. But for the foolish devices of their wickedness, wherewith being deceived, they worship serpents void of reason, and vile beasts, thou didst send a multitude of unreasonable beasts upon them for vengeance. Verse 16. For they might know what wherewithal a man sinneth, by the same also shall he be punished. For thy almighty hand that made the world of matter without form wanted not means to send among them a multitude of bears or fierce lions or unknown wild beasts full of rage, newly created, breathing out either a fiery vapor or filthy scent of scattered smoke, or shooting horrible sparkles out of their eyes. Verse 19. Whereof not only the harm might dispatch them at once, but also the terrible sight utterly destroy them. Yea, and without these might they have fallen down with one blast, being persecuted of vengeance and scattered abroad through the breath of thy power. But thou hast ordered all things in measure and number and weight. Verse 21. For thou canst show thy great strength at all times when thou wilt, and who may withstand the power of thine arm? For the whole world before thee is as a little grain of the balance, yea, as a drop of the morning dew that falleth down upon the earth. But thou hast mercy upon all, for thou canst do all things, and winkest at the sin of men, because they should amend. Verse 24. For thou lovest all the things that are, and abhorrest nothing which thou hast made. For never wouldest thou have made anything if thou hadst hated it. And how could anything have endured if it had not been thy will, or been preserved if not called by thee? But thou sparest all, for they are thine, O Lord, thou lover of souls. Chapter 12. For thine incorruptible spirit is in all things. Therefore, chastenest thou them by little and little that offend, and warnest them by putting them in remembrance wherein they have offended, that leaving their wickedness they may believe on thee, O Lord. For it was thy will to destroy by the hands of our father both those old inhabitants of thy holy land, whom thou hatest for doing most odious works of witchcraft and wicked sacrifices, and also those merciless murderers of children and devourers of men's flesh, and the feast of blood, were their priests out of the midst of their idolatrous crew, and the parents that killed their own hands so destitute of help. Verse 7. That the land which thou esteemest above all other might receive a worthy colony of God's children. Nevertheless, even those thou sparedest as men, and didst send wasps, forerunner of thine host, to destroy them little by little. Verse 9. Not that thou wast unable to bring the ungodly under the hand of the righteous in battle, or to destroy them at once with cruel beasts or with one rough word, but exceeding thy judgment, executing thy judgment upon them by little and little, thou gavest them a place of repentance, not being ignorant that they were not a naughty generation, and that their malice was bred in them, that their cognition would never be changed. For it was a cursed seed from the beginning, neither didst thou for fear of any man give them pardon for those things wherein they sin. For who shall say, who hast thou done? Or who shall withstand thy judgment? Or who shall accuse thee for the nations that perish, whom thou hast made? Or who will come to stand against thee to be revenged for the unrighteous man? For neither is there any God but thou, that careth for all, to whom thou mightest show that thy judgment is not unright. Neither shall king or tyrant be able to set his face against thee for any whom thou hast punished. For so much then as thou art righteous thyself, thou orderest all things righteously, thinking it not agreeable with thy power to condemn them that hath not deserved to be punished. For thy power is the beginning of righteousness, and because thou art the Lord of all, it maketh thee to be gracious unto all. For when men will not believe that thou art of full power, thou showest thy strength among them, that they know it, thou makest their boldness manifest. But thou, mastering thy power, judgest with equity, and orderest us with great favor, for thou mayest use power when thou wilt. Verse 19. But by such works hast thou taught thy people that the just man should be merciful, and hast made thy children to be of good hope, that thou givest repentance for sins. For if thou didst punish the enemies of thy children, and to condemn to death with such deliberation, giving them thy place whereby they might be delivered for their malice. For how great circumcision didst thou judge thine own sons, unto whose fathers thou hast sworn and made covenants of good promises. Therefore, whereas thou dost chasten us, thou scourgest our enemies 1,000 times more, to the intent that when we judge, we should carefully think of thy goodness, and when we ourselves are judged, we should look for mercy. Wherefore, whereas men have lived dissolutely, and unrighteously thou hast tormented them with their own abominations, for they went astray very far in the ways of error, and held them for gods, which even among the beasts of their enemies were despised, being deceived as children of no understanding. Therefore unto them, as to children without the use of reason, thou didst send a judgment to mock them. But they would not be reformed, but that correction wherein he dallied with them shall feel a judgment worthy of God. For look, for what things are grudged when they are punished, that is, for them whom they thought to be gods. Now being punished in them, when they saw it, they acknowledged him to be the true God, whom before they denied to know, and therefore came extreme damnation upon them. Chapter 13. Surely vain are all men by nature, whom are ignorant of God, and could not out of the good things that are seen know him. That is, neither by considering the works did they acknowledge the workmaster, but deemed either fire or wind, or the swift air, or the circle of the stars, or the violent water, or the lights of heaven to be the gods which govern the world. With whose beauty, if they being delighted, took them to be gods. Let them know how much better the Lord of them is, for the first author of beauty hath created them. But if they were astonished at their power and virtue, let them understand by them how much mightier is he that made them. For by greatness and beauty of the creatures proportionally, the maker of them is seen. But yet for this they are the less to be blamed, for they peradventure err, seeking God and desirous to find him. For being conversant in his work, they search him diligently, and believe their sight, because the things are beautiful that are seen. Howbeit neither are they to be pardoned. For if they were able to know so much that they claim that they could aim at the world, how did they not sooner find the Lord thereof? But miserable are they, and in dead things is their hope, who called them gods, which are the works of men's hands, gold and silver. It shewed in art and resemblance of beasts, and or a stone good for nothing, the work of an ancient hand. Now a carpenter that fell his timber, after he has sawn down a tree meet for the purpose, and taken off all the bark skillfully round about, and hath wrought it in handsomely, and made a vessel thereof fit for the service of a man's life, and after spending the refuse of his works to dress his meat, have filled himself, and taking the very refuse among these which serve to no use, being crooked piece of wood and full of knots, hath carved it diligently, when he had nothing else to do, and formed it by the skill of his understanding, and fashioned it to the image of a man, or made it to like some vile beast, laying it over the vermilion, and with paint coloring it red, and covering every spot therein. And when he had made a convenient room for it, set it in a wall, and made it fast with iron, for he provided for it, and made it not fall, knowing that it was unable to help itself, for it is an image, and hath need of help. Then maketh he prayer for his goods, for his wife and children, and is not ashamed to speak to that which hath no life. For health he calleth upon that which is weak, for life prayeth to that which is dead, for aid humbly beseech that which help least means to help. For a good journey he asks of that which cannot set foot forward, and for gaining and getting, and for good success of his hands asketh ability to do them that most unable to do anything. That was 11, 12, and 13. This is the book club. Welcome to the Wisdom of Solomon.